Now recording. Now recording.
Now recording.
Now recording.
GM, everyone.
GM.
GM.
But just a couple of minutes here for people to filter in. Efi, you up for going first when we get rolling here?
Either that or Major Hayes. I can go first.
I'm fine either way.
I can see Chris trying to talk, but I can't hear him.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Are you sure about that?
Oh, there he is. Yep, we hear you.
I think it was just my keyboard and the noise canceling. So you probably saw some green, but the noise canceling probably killed it.
Do you want to go first, Chris, or should I pull it up?
No, I
Yeah, I
certainly.
mean- Yeah, here. Let's welcome everybody here before we just dive right into stuff.
Yeah.
So, GM, welcome everyone to this installment of ShapeShiftDAO's engineering demos. As a reminder, and I've given a similar spiel at most of them, these are meant to be fun, no pressure opportunities for the engineering work stream as well as community members to present progress on feature work, share ideas, proof of concepts, or discuss anything else really that's of a technical nature. So these are often works in progress. Hiccups are expected. It's really not a demo if everything goes completely to plan. So with that, I will hand it off to Major Hayes. Not quite sure
Sure.
where we landed on that. Cool.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
that's no problem. All right. So today I'm going to be showing Cosmos working in the app. And then for the technical people, maybe I'll show a little bit about how it works differently than how the app worked before. All right, so assuming everyone can see my screen, I'm running this locally, but that's because the wallet that I have Cosmos or Atom in, I have saved locally, and anyway, it does work in Cloudflare pages though, and I can show that. All right, so this should all look pretty familiar. On the dashboard page here, you can see, look, I've got Cosmos. I have 0.01 Atom for 30 cents worth. That gets included up in the chart up here. If I go to search assets, I can see Cosmos in there now. There might be there's other Cosmos related coins that have been added also. But we're just going to focus on Atom because that's the only one I have a balance in. Here's us showing the Cosmos price chart and our balance chart. The reason the balance chart looks the way that it does, someone sent me Cosmos like 2 days ago or something. So I should have a zero balance for most of this time up until the end of the month. But we don't have transaction history yet, so we can't figure out like when I actually got the balance. We can only show the actual balance right now. And then all of this other stuff still works as expected. And we've got like the staking stuff. This is just a placeholder right now. None of this stuff is wired up, but we've got some of this stuff at least in there, the UI at least in there. So all of that stuff there, and that's really all there is to it. The reason I'm kind of excited about this has less to do with what it looks like and more to do with how it's structured in the code. So what I want to do is just very briefly for the community kind of show why this is different. Cosmos. If I could type, geez. All right. So the big change really here with Cosmos versus Bitcoin and Ethereum is with Bitcoin and Ethereum, let's say we have like a send modal. And I go into the send modal, like use send details is a good example. this is trying to be a send modal for every supported chain. So we end up with these like big switch statements in here of like, okay, well, if the asset is Ethereum, then we have to go do these things. If it's Bitcoin, we have to go do these things. And then if we followed this same pattern and we wanted to add Osmos and Osmosis and Dogecoin and whatever, right? Like we would end up with pretty massively difficult to maintain switch statement of what to do in the case of every possible chain. So we felt that was
Major
kind of,
Hayes,
yeah,
real quick, any chance you can increase font size a little bit?
yeah,
Just on the code, it was tough to see for my old eyes anyway.
yeah, of course, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. So once I zoom in, now you can actually see the whole switch statement. That's how big it is. So you've got Ethereum in here, and we've got Bitcoin in here, and following the same pattern, we would have had to keep adding more switch statements in here, right? So what we decided we wanted to do instead was make every chain kind of be able to work kind of independently so that outside contributors can contribute easier without having to figure out all the little places where we've got this chain specific code at. And so the structure here is this plugin structure. So here we have a Cosmos plugin. The way a plugin works is we define a plugin ID, and then we define some routes for that plugin. So in this case, we have this assets route. So the default route of assets, these are variables here, and then that common component kind of splits it and decides what to do. Here we're hard coding. Hey, if you get an asset that starts with Cosmos Osmosis -1, then render this component instead. And the same here with Cosmos Hub 4. So the plugin kind of intercepts these routes. And so when someone goes and clicks on the Atom asset, for example, it starts with Cosmos Hub 4. So then it renders this component here instead of what's currently our default component. So this Cosmos asset component is here, and it looks a lot like the current asset component, except that we render a Cosmos specific account details component. And this one also looks a lot like the common one, except we've added in staking opportunities and we've removed the Yearn stuff that's in the common one right now. So stripped it down to just the features that are relevant. Obviously there's a lot of duplication in right here, and we can kind of work on that a little bit later to reduce some duplication. But the idea here is I can change this Cosmos asset page to look however I want to. So, excuse me. Oh, sorry, just sneezed. Unique to Cosmos right now is only going to get rendered through this component here. We don't have to go into the common asset page and add in, okay, if the Cosmos thing is turned on and the current asset is Cosmos, then render this thing, blah, blah, blah. We don't have to add any of that logic, right? It's just built in. And then you can see we've already started building some stuff that's specific to Cosmos here, like these staking and getting started modals that I very quickly went through earlier. So our hope is that now that we've actually got this working in the app, we start adding send modal with the memo field that's custom and a bunch of the other staking components in here. That everything's going to stay here and self-contained and behind a feature flag, and it'll just be a lot easier to maintain than the way we currently have with all those switch statements and chain-specific code littered all over different places of the application. So I'll open it up for questions that anybody might have.
Immediate question is, can you touch on how this doesn't make
the dryness of this, how much repetition we're trading off for ease of use.
Projects that that are widely supported, and once you have an immense data set for that, the question is, how do you make it so that you're aggregating the preferences of the poor and the many, and not the rich and the few? And this mechanism, as I understand it, just like if you're an insider, it kind of like mutes your contributions a little bit. That's kind of like my sort of like TLDR.
Sorry, I've got some like audio going on. Is it from the channel or am
I was just gonna ask, I guess, some follow-up to see if I'm like understanding the meaning of this. It sounds like
mute GXN223.
trying. It's
Is that what it is? Okay.
Cool.
Okay, I was like, what? That question seems entirely irrelevant to the discussion at hand. Yeah,
I did not know what was going on with that question.
I was hoping you would try to answer it.
Okay, so there's they're back in. Can we? I'm gonna just mute him.
And done.
Okay, so there is a trade-off, right? And in the I kind of see two things that we're kind of balancing between, right? There's flexibility and consistency. And in our previous paradigm, we were very much on the consistency side of that balance, right? Low flexibility because it's hard to put in a bunch of chain specific stuff everywhere. So you want to try to use like a common, what's the lowest common denominator of features everywhere? To limit all this extra chain specific code, but that provides us a lot of consistency in the user interface. The plugin model kind of flips that the other way around and aims for flexibility per chain or per feature because the plugins don't have to be chains. They could be a plugin that does Thorchain trading or something like that, right? And it trades flexibility for consistency. So to kind of balance that out, what we want to do in the near term is create a bunch of reusable small common components. So rather than an entire send modal, we might break that out into several reusable components that can be composed into a send modal. But there's going to end up being a Bitcoin send modal, an Ethereum send modal, a Cosmos send modal, right? So we're going to gain the flexibility of, hey, at Cosmos, we have a memo field in the send modal, and in Bitcoin, we don't. But if someone wants to go redesign the send modal, that may take more work because we may have to go into each of the plugins and make adjustments for each plugin. So that's the trade-off right there. I personally think that it's worth it because outside contributors can now come in and basically commit one directory and it has their entire chain in it or their entire feature in it. And they don't have to go muck around in the rest of the code and accidentally break some other chain that's totally unrelated. But we do have to keep in mind that we are losing that automatic consistency, and it's going to take a little bit more effort on our part to kind of maintain that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So I think you did a great job explaining the way we're partitioning components, isolating things into like chain specific units. And I think the trade-off in terms of dryness is absolutely going to be worth it in terms of the gains we get in readability, like how easy it is to come in and work on a specific component or add a feature or add a new chain, as well as like parallelizing those efforts. Because things are separate, you should be able to come in and add X, Y, Z chain and ABC chain. They're each working in their own like isolated portions of the source tree and not stomping each other and getting conflict churn and all that. So I think long term, this really sets us up to cruise. and not have messy code and a million 100 different files to add a chain or make changes. So really, really enthusiastic about this approach from the web architecture perspective.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other comments, feedback, questions? All right. Well, thanks for letting me show you Cosmos.
Thank you much, Major Hayes. Next. Is that DeFi's mic, or do we got more shit?
No,
Someone's unmuted. If anyone can see who that is, I'll ban them.
Yeah, I'm looking now, trying to tell.
I just put the ban hammer down.
Oh, I think so.
Oh boy.
All right. I guess we can do this one then.
Yeah. So Cypress and Apotheosis work, as he's probably sound asleep at the moment.
Hopefully he's sound asleep. I'd be concerned if he's not. All right. So first of all, presenting this on behalf of Apotheosis did all this work. I'm not taking any credit for it at all. This was entirely on his own initiative. And it's a good point for anyone that's listening and interested in joining the engineering work stream as well. This is how Apotheosis basically demonstrated, that he was keen to get involved and, went out on his own volition and came up with Cypress, suggested that we added end-to-end Cypress testing and, then went and spoke with, I believe, Major Hayes and then Kevin and others to kind of get architectural sign-off before he went ahead and did it. So, if you're thinking of joining, this is the kind of thing that we really appreciate and look highly upon. So, first of all, what is Cypress? Cypress is an end-to-end testing suite. So we already have Jest for unit testing. So for people that are less technical, unit testing is kind of isolated testing chunks of the code in isolation. So, a particular function or reducer or something like that. The issue with unit tests are very useful. They run quickly, they test a very specific part of the functionality, they enable things like refactoring to be a lot easier. They give us a lot of confidence in individual parts of our business logic, but the part of the issue with unit tests is they don't test how things integrate together, namely how the whole app functions together. You can have a bunch of working parts, but when you put them together, they may not behave as expected. So Cypress does end-to-end testing, and what I mean by that is it's clicking around the app basically. So I'm gonna just have a look, open up Cypress here and show you guys. So we've made all this public, by the way, as well, all the runs. So it's set up for the web repository, and there's a handful of tests that run against it. So if we have a look here, I guess this is just filtered wrong. If I do today, all right. So let's have a look at something that Beard has done here on his branch called Foxy Stuff. So here's the run that happened, and we can see that all of the tests have passed, and we can then go and have a look at all of these tests. So what this does is actually spins up an environment, and we're mocking out the back end. So it's not talking to Unchained or anything like that. It's just we've taken the responses from what we would expect from the network, and we're mocking those out, and everything is running up to the network boundary essentially. So that's what we can where we're testing just the front end from end to end rather than spinning up an entire back end environment. Now we could do that down the track, but then you get into the issue of flaky network and stuff. So this is kind of according to the Cypress docs, the suggested best practice of doing this. So you can see here we've got a bunch of specs. So we've got a login spec. and the things that are automatically being tested. So supports login via an imported native wallet, supports login via locally stored native wallet, fails to can't log in natively when there's no native wallet, and even testing stuff like a Portis login. Let's just have a look at the dashboard spec, for example, supports trades, and we can actually watch the video that's recorded of this here too, and you can see how long this takes. 21 seconds for this test to run. So we'll hit the watch video of this. It automatically skips past the kind of setup page of this. And then you can see here, like the bot's clicking around. It's, clicking on the swap assets button now. Then it's like testing the trade preview button and then the sell max button. Now it's waiting on that button to resolve as well. So basically this is doing what we could do manually. And now it's testing like sends as well. The amounts, what we expect, the error messages that we expect. Supports send transaction setup, receive transaction setup. So all of this stuff is kind of a smoke test. Now we could do this manually, but obviously if we can have this run in a handful, like less than a minute, with no delays and perfect accuracy, it gives us a lot more confidence and also relieves pressure from ops that would be just doing this kind of this testing work manually, and it's quite repetitive. So the idea is not to kind of put ops out of a job, but to relieve them from the really repetitive type testing that it doesn't, it's valuable, but if we can automate it, we should be. And it basically frees up ops to work on, higher value testing, like testing new features and more complicated parts of the app. So it's really, really good thing to see. So we've also got this running in every pull request now. So we've got a bunch of checks happening. We've got our, this is kind of our unit testing stuff. So we check that, PR title is correct, that the linting passes, the type checking, the unit tests, and then the build. We've already got the confidence of that, but now we've got these 3 Cypress test runs that runs these variety of specs. So testing the splash screen, testing the login, testing the dashboard. So we can see what the login tests look like as well. We've got a mnemonic in there put in, and see that the wallet pairs correctly and everything like that. So this is going to give us a lot of confidence going forward, and it means for engineering, if you make a change and the test break, the responsibility is on you to update the tests. We've also done a very good job of using the correct data test things you can see here. So a lot of criticism that people have of end-to-end tests is that they're fragile, or they break too easily. Given that we added these test attributes to the elements that we want to be able to grab a hold of in the application code, it means that they're a lot more robust, less likely to just randomly kind of break, through a build that gives some sort of element in the DOM a new CSS selector or something like that. So a lot of confidence there. And then we can also kind of use this pattern for the upcoming Pendo stuff as well. That'll be on the alpha version of ShapeShift. So there'll be the more features there, but you'll be trading that off with the choice to opt into analytics. But we can use this same kind of pattern for the kind of demo or tutorial or guide that Pendo is going to allow us to do as well. So it's pretty cool. It gives engineering and ops confidence that changes haven't broken core functionality. And we're going to be bouncing out a lot of test coverage here as well for the kind of common flows. So if you have front end or Cypress experience and are keen to get involved, we'd be more than welcome to have PRs. You can also approach us, if we haven't created bounties for this stuff, and say that you have expertise in this and want to do it. We'd be all ears to that and can craft a bounty for you accordingly. So that's pretty much what I wanted to demo on behalf of Apotheosis. So happy to take any questions as well.
Just some feedback. Yeah, I love Cypress and end-to-end testing. You guys will find a lot of value in
Whoever's asking's got a really quiet mic, by the way.
Sorry, how's that?
Yeah, it's a little better.
Okay, so yeah, I'm a big advocate for end-to-end testing when done properly. You guys will, I think, really value this. This is going to save a lot of time as far as QAing, regression testing, anything along those lines as it gets built out. I think you'll be really happy with this. I think this is a great implementation, and I'll probably plan to connect with you on getting some bounties. This is Rowdy, by the way.
Yep. Cool. Glad to see you joining demos as well. Yeah, like if you want to add particular tests or as part of your onboarding getting involved, we'd love that.
Rowdy, Ops is going to be building some lists of tests hopefully by the end of this week, so we can coordinate with you too. From our list of what we are currently manually testing, we'd like to see added. So I'll try and coordinate with you specifically when we get those written.
Awesome.
DeFi, a question for you. So, as a contributor, how should I determine when I need to add Cypress tests? Will that be something that would be in a bounty, or would that be? How would we determine that?
Very much a use your own discretion thing. So we're not aiming for some like arbitrary threshold of test coverage. You know, we don't want every single button clicked throughout the app. It's more about, you know, a really good starting point if you wanted to would be talk to Tyler. Tyler has a manual checklist that Ops already goes through that they do for their smoke testing. So now that we have this infrastructure in place, I believe Apotheosis had a bunch more tests that kind of got broken because it's difficult to kind of get these tests in initially, but once they're in, there's like a line in the sand where we're not going to regress from that. So I think Apotheosis has got a handful of other tests that he wants to add. Plus, Tyler's got, like I said, this laundry list of items that operations test. So we really want to be testing like core functionality that's stable and is not going to change. You know, things like the dashboard, the balance charts, the, you know, trade functionality, the TX history. So as a feature kind of comes in, becomes stable, and is not liable to change, that makes it a good candidate for testing. It's like I said, it's very much something we need to use our discretion around. Not every brand new feature that you put in needs to have an end-to-end test for it, but you know, if it's something that Ops is spending a lot of time of and we can automate it, it's easier for us to either do the work ourselves or, you know, ideally just bounty it out to someone like Rowdy or others that are interested in adding that coverage.
Perfect. Thanks.
Any other
Awesome.
questions?
So super glad to see we got some traction on this, and very grateful to Apotheosis. Make sure to let him know on the side when he's around.
Real quick, I had a question before we move on.
Yeah, go for it.
So you when it spins up, you might have already answered this. When it spins up in that Cypress IDE environment on the website and runs the tests, it's using an existing Unchained backend, or?
No, it's stubbed out. So all the network requests are like the market stuff, the account stuff, they're all stubbed out. So we're only testing up to the network boundary. That was a design decision based on what Cypress recommends. You know, the worst than having no tests is having flaky tests. And if you throw a network boundary in there, they both get slower and flakier. So this is just what Cypress recommends to stub out your backend. And so that's what we've done.
Okay, cool. So I guess that means like there's certain paths that aren't totally testable this way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is there was a few bounties that Apotheosis put out to get this working. I think he's still got one open for the WebSocket stuff so that we can mock out. We need to be able to like mock the WebSocket to do the transaction history. So that's kind of an open bounty in progress, and then that'll unlock
There's
that.
engineering demos. Okay.
Who needs a ban? Oh, he just disappeared.
What you said makes
that was
sense. That's good.
Great question. Elma, and makes me curious. So I totally agree. Like, you want your test to be isolated, and you want to test a specific layer or component. There's also value in the full end to end. Is there, or I mean, there's options, right? So like, you could make it so instead of mocking, you use a real backend, but in some other scenario to test the full thing. Or we could go a route of, say, a separate set of tests that integration test the APIs that the front end is dependent on. Have we thought about that, or do you have opinions on that type of testing?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see validity there. You know, like if an upstream data provider is down, then, you know, the app's not going to work. Like if we can't hit the CoinGecko API, or we can't hit Unchained. So I think there's certainly validity there, and we could consider adding that as like a bunch of test suites that are like live and connected. You know, we could have a demo Unchained environment. Obviously, there's like cost associated there. Maybe we just pointed at the dev cluster. Yeah, there could be validity in having something like on a cron job that basically does what operations does regularly. You know, which is they would do like smoke tests of prod. Now, this was made way more pertinent for centralized ShapeShift, and we had a lot of this, like a huge amount of backend infrastructure and services that were kind of inherently flaky. Now that Unchained's a lot more stable and minimal, I think it's less valid, but we can certainly still consider that. Who is that?
Maybe we need to move this thing back to the stage.
I think we may. Yeah, I can't even see who's unmuted.
He's muted.
I already got him.
Cool. But yeah, so like I think there is validity. We can certainly, like, Cypress is certainly able to do that. We could talk with Kevin about, you know, is it appropriate just to test, you know, should we test against like app and prod, like off main on a regular basis? As kind of a smoke test, is the app still healthy? Do we do it off the develop branch rather than against PRs? All sorts of things like that. So certainly able to, and I think, you know, as we get more and more functionality in, we can look at doing that.
Yeah, it kind of becomes a health check, or at least has overlaps with that, and get us early warning if something beyond our control has changed, or a bug, a time sensitive bug or something was introduced that now started being a problem.
Yeah, I just want to chime in and say that the mocking out is, at least in my mind, like a prerequisite for everything else. I mean, I would love to see potentially some live tests or against a live backend in order to just validate that, you know, what the customers see is going to be, you know, the right thing. But the, you know, mocking out has the benefit of sort of keeping you honest about what services you're actually depending on, and, you know, providing essentially a documentation of the interface between the front end and the back end, and that's very valuable. We several months ago we discovered in HD Wallet that there were some tests that were hitting the internet, and it was a thing that was, you know, totally the same forever and would never change until it did change, and then all our shit broke, and, you know, it looked like a regression, and it wasn't really. So that sucked.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think, like I said, we can get there, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. It's a whole lot better than we had. It's only going to continue to improve, and, you know, it's been architected in a contemporary way that's anti-fragile. So yeah, I think this is a great step, and we can make things more robust as we go.
Yes, this is all great, and it's wonderful, and I support it, and whatever.
Yeah.
There.
And ops can manually cover all of the things that our edge cases are currently mocked right now, and we've kind of got our eyes on that as well. So there's always a manual test behind any of these robot tests too, to assure.
Wait, is there any other things that we want to demo, even from a technical perspective? Like Chris, you could talk about the cape stuff as that's kind of maturing. I know I demoed that many months back when that initially came about, which is kind of dry and boring, but has become a integral part of our stuff.
Yeah, I can do that.
Sure, we
Especially
get a
because it
surprise
seems.
demo from Nerd Hair.
Ooh, that works too.
Sorry, I was on a plane yesterday, so I got nothing. Well, nothing completely working yet, at least.
It's a demo.
I'm
just
I'll see what
sounds like Major Hayes got some more material for us. I had to poke at you because I think the last two you came in with a big surprise at the end, which was awesome.
You want me to go now? I can go now.
That would be great.
I always have a hard time finding which window to share. Gotta be this one. Okay, well, hopefully I shared the right one. Yeah, okay. All right, so for those who aren't familiar, CAPE is this chain agnostic improvement proposal. And the idea is to create a standardized reference to blockchains, accounts, and assets. And one recently that we've kind of run into trouble with is CAPE 19. CAPE 19 has a pretty clear definition. We have a chain ID, which comes from CAPE 2. That is a chain type, colon, and then a chain reference, and then a slash, and then asset namespace, colon, asset reference. It seems all pretty straightforward, but one of the problems we were running into is that our existing code was using network types and chain types, which are not directly related to the CAPE stuff. And then we were like converting between them. So see if I can find it buried in here somewhere. A lot of changes. See if I can just go look at the existing implementation here. Okay. So it ended up getting fairly complicated to both create a yeah. Sorry, no, you're right. It was small. It was small even for me. So creating a CAPE 19 string out of some, enum values. Originally, we had like contract type and token ID, which, if you're doing Ethereum sounds reasonable, but it doesn't really apply to most chains. So we started adding the asset namespace and asset reference stuff. But you can see there's a lot of like switch statements and stuff that have to happen in here, right? If it's this chain, then, render, this string. And if the namespace is this, then do that. And if it's Ethereum, and then if it's Ethereum and it's got a token ID, then we have to do this. And like you can see, it's a fairly substantial amount of logic. And that's just for 3 chains, right? Ethereum, Bitcoin, and Cosmos. So if you think about adding more chains in the future, this could get quite unwieldy. And then from Cape 19 is basically parsing the string and converting that back into these like enum values that we use in different places in the app to check like, oh, is this Bitcoin? So
Do you want to briefly touch on the motivation, Chris, and why this is like specific to us being cross-chain, and why other apps don't have this problem as much? Like why we use capes full stop?
yeah, so if we go back to that use send details thing, where were we at? Here we go. Right, we've got this code where we like switch on the chain type, this enum value here, right? Chain types, Ethereum, Bitcoin, or whatever. So all of our original code was designed with these enums, without capes at all. So we tried to have like this chain specific code that's based on these chain types. We had and it just got, as you can see, it just gets cumbersome to try to identify any particular asset or stuff, because you need like a combination of a bunch of these enums in order to kind of pass stuff around. So if I wanted to pass into this one a specific asset, I'd have to say, okay, well, it's on this chain and it's in this chain's network and it's in, here's the contract ID for that. But like I said, that works for Ethereum, but Cosmos doesn't use the contract ID concept, right? So then you'd have to pass in, okay, well, here's the IBC, string or whatever. So all that logic would get kind of difficult to manage. So capes are really nice because you essentially get this one string that's like, this is Atom. Like that's it. So when you click on the asset, the asset list, and you click on a thing, all we need to do is pass through like, oh, you want to go look at your CryptoKitty? Like that's it right there. Like we just pass that one string through and it contains all the information we need to go identify that specific asset in kind of one chunk. And that makes it easy, like in our assets list, to just have the cape value in there. We don't have to have like 4 enums that specify what chain it is, what network it's on, what type of, if it's an ERC20 or not, what the contract address is. We don't have to split all that stuff out. We could just have this one string value to pass around. And that's what simplifies a lot of things in the code. It's just having this one string to pass around.
And it's not just for assets, right? Like we can do chains, and like we can identify an account on a different blockchain with one string as well. And like they also include, like an account can tell you what chain it belongs to. And similarly, like an asset has all the information in it to tell you like what chain and network it belongs to.
Yep, exactly. So they're quite useful. Like here's an example of like a reference to a specific Cosmos account, right? Exactly. So like I said, go ahead, Adam.
If I can just interject real quick, to me, the huge bang here, the huge value is there's no like official registry of crypto assets. Even on a single chain like Ethereum, right? People tend to refer to assets by like ticker symbols. That's what exchanges use. But even on a single chain, you can have 10 different Fox assets. Then you get into cross chain, and these things are all like really disparate and doing their own thing. And it's really tough in an app where you're then bringing sort of these namespaces of whatever assets happen to exist on any given chain together into one unified view, and in a way that we're confident that when someone trades for XYZ coin, they're trading for exactly what they think they're trading for and not a scam. This has been a huge problem historically. It was a problem in CoinCap. It's been a problem pretty much everywhere. So I think like having a convention based system like Cape is a huge win in terms of having a reliable way to say I'm talking about this specific asset on this specific chain, and then relating that to accounts, and like Chris explained really well, a single string identifier that can be parsed back to the asset that it represents and vice versa in a predictable way.
Not only like the ticket symbol is not unique, but you can have that same like Fox across different layers. Like Fox is on Gnosis chain as well, and it's the same asset, it's just on a different network.
I was going to point that out here in the screen share, right? Like Atom, you can have Atom on the Cosmos core chain, but you can also have it on the Osmosis chain. Like you can deposit your Atom in the Osmosis chain. So it's like we have two things, both called Cosmos and both called Atom, and yet they are actually different assets. If I click on this one, you can see up here, it's very tiny. You probably can't read it at all, but it says Cosmos Osmosis -1 IBC blah blah blah. That's referring to Atom that's in on the Cosmos blockchain versus this other Atom up here, which is Cosmos Cosmos Hub 4 slip 44118, which refers to the native asset on the Cosmos chain. So like Cosmos is probably one of the things that we're working on right now that really demonstrated the need for this versus relying on something like a name or a symbol, because Cosmos throws that all out the window because you can have assets on any chain, through IBC and all that stuff. So it gets very confusing.
This is another benefit of like the open source version of ShapeShift 2 is because we wrote all these adapters. So we've already got adapters for Yearn, CoinGecko, CoinGap, CoinCap, which takes, historically every crypto company or organization or project comes up with their own way of identifying assets. And so we wrote these adapters that can, and they're all open source and essentially a public good. So anyone can now turn a CoinGecko ID, like, ShapeShift-Fox-token into a globally unique asset identifier. And the Cosmos spec didn't exist. So Major Hayes and Theobald went and wrote this and then contributed it back to the standard. So like we're essentially developing standards now to meet this need, and this whole cross-chain world's obviously not going away. So it's a really cool thing that as part of our regular work, like our solutions are now shared for the world to use.
Yeah, so if you're watching the screen share, I was showing some examples of those adapters and how we map the Cape 19 or Cape 19 in this case to a CoinGecko identifier.
Hey,
All
where
right,
did we
so-
land on multiple native assets like Osmo and Ion and Cape?
Yeah, we can. I'll dive into that in just as I'm going through
cool.
this explanation. So, I can answer it right now. We submitted a proposal. Well, maybe we did. Did we ever submit it?
I don't think we
We're
ever got
working on we're working on a proposal to the Capes repo to add a new Cape to, like, there is one for defining Cosmos, the blockchain namespace, but not an asset namespace. So we're working on a proposal to create a namespace called native, and that native asset namespace would have a value of like UION or whatever to reference the ION chain on
as well as
Osmosis.
the IBC asset. We found working in Cosmos, the existing Cape 19, it worked well for Slip 44, like the native Cosmos asset. But when you got onto the Osmosis chain, you had Osmosis and Ion were both native assets, and using Slip 44 could not relate to both of them to identify uniquely the two assets. So we wanted to add the asset namespace of native and IBC as well, that did not exist in the existing Cape 19 standard. So that's what we are extending as ShapeShift in identifying this issue in Cosmos that was not fully addressed.
Yeah. So we are trying to participate in the Cape ecosystem. So to the point of what we were working on recently is, again, we have these big switch statements about, converting to and from. And a lot of the complication here is that we have this weird naming like contract type and token ID. And we also allowed you to like not have to provide the asset namespace or asset reference. And we, like in this case right here, we would go, oh, if you didn't provide an asset reference, then we're just going to give you back like the quote unquote default one. Which kind of sounds reasonable, but in my opinion, just adds some unnecessary complexity to it all. So we have a PR out 406, right? So here's this same file in our PR. So we still have to do the same conversions to network types and stuff like that because of backwards compatibility issues. So rather than have a bunch of switch statements, I just made these kind of maps. So if the chain reference comes back as Bitcoin mainnet, then we're just going to use, network type. But anyway, what I really want to point out is like that to function is now this long. Like that's the whole to function now. So it's much shorter, simpler, and there's no like if it's this chain, do that. We do have some logic in here about, if it's slip 44, then it needs to be a valid numerical value. If it's an ERC20, then it needs to start with 0x and it needs to be 42 characters and lowercase, right? So there's a little bit of logic, but it's more based on the asset namespace than based on like which chain and stuff it is. And it drastically simplified the logic because now you're required to pass in all 4 of the pieces that we talked about earlier. The chain type, the chain reference, or the chain's network, the asset namespace, and the asset reference. Now that we know we get all 4 of those all the time, we can drastically simplify the logic and then just always return, right, this same type of reference. And then parsing is also dramatically simpler. So we just use these maps to map from the Cape 19 string to our existing enum values here. And then again, we do have a little bit of like, if it's network type is osmosis, then the chain type needs to be osmosis. If it's an ERC20, we need to lowercase it. So there's still a little bit of custom logic in there for specific scenarios, but for the most part, it's drastically simplified here. And again, we're just leveraging these 4 specific pieces every time. And then I added, for those of you who've written unit tests and haven't done an each statement, they're sweet. So I took a bunch of Cape 19s and I ran them through. I wanted to make sure that we can parse our own things. So first I generated an object from a Cape 19, and then I call Q Cape 19 on that object, and I should get back the exact same value that I put in. So I added those tests, and then I also added the inverse of those tests down here of if I start with the object, then I should convert that to a Cape 19 and then back to an object and get the exact same values back out. So just added a little bit of reliability and consistency in there for that. So that's our big change there with the capes, is just trying to simplify all of that and get some consistency going. There's still some additional future changes we want to make, but we have to kind of do this step by step because even this one adds pretty significant breaking changes, and the next iteration of changes will also add breaking changes. So that's just more of our progress towards getting away from all of these enum values and stuff and standardizing on tape. Anything else you wanted me to touch on, DeFi?
No, that pretty much covers it. That's great.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Major Hayes.
Public goods are good. And so are unique identifiers.
Absolutely. Cool. So I think that's all we got. Unless Mr. Nerdhair was just being bashful and really has one more for us. All right.
Here we go.
Oh, I knew
Yes,
it.
this is 100% completely off topic, by the way. This is a thing
Font size, by the way.
Say what?
Font size.
Oh, right. Thanks. Sorry.
Are you on ultra wide? Because wow,
yeah, I'm on ultra wide, and everybody hates me. Okay, so right. This is actually probably the wrong thing to show first. I'm going to show you my credit card. Screen
cool.
share.
Hold on,
Change
I got my
window.
camera.
Yeah. Okay.
Now recording.
Right. So this is a project that is completely inspired by the fact that the acronym is funny. It's called EVM-EMV. It's the Ethereum virtual machine implementation of Europay MasterCard Visa. Okay, so all those chip cards, that you get from banks, they have RSA key pairs inside, and they can do public key cryptography. Let me dump a card here, and you can see, how it works. You reset the card, you get, an identifying string from it. There's this master file thing named, with a well-known name that lists the applications on the card, and then you can interrogate those applications and send them commands to do things like sign stuff. The EMV standard is kind of wonky. You can only sign 4 bytes, so that sucks because it means that you can't sign like a properly long, transaction hash or anything. But I'm sure I'll leave that as an exercise for the next generation of open source people, I guess. And the idea here is that I'm building a Gnosis safe transaction guard that can that will only let you do a transaction from a safe if you have submitted a signed hash from a physical chip card. So it's like a discount hardware wallet, essentially. It proves physical presence, but it doesn't, the card doesn't have a screen to show you what you're signing. Anyway, it's sort of a curiosity. I wrote some JavaScript to parse the issuer certificate, specific fields and extract the card's public key, and perform a verification against some test vectors that I sent to the card. You can see if I run that. What was my command again? Oh, dev. Yeah, okay. You can see that it takes the raw stuff from the card, decodes the RSA public keys. This is the signature from the card. It decodes the authentication data. This is essentially the transaction hash, the truncated transaction hash that you would be getting the card to sign. And then this is an interesting number that you can't rely on, but it's in there anyway. So I wrote this in JavaScript, and then I ported it to Solidity. So this is a smart contract that does all of that stuff. Here's an implementation of SHA-1, which I did not write. I stole from somebody, and haven't got all the comments in yet. There's some supporting functions here to prep things, because in order to use RSA, you have to use the precompile contract at address 0x05. All these functions consume an absurd amount of gas, but do basically exactly the same thing as the above deal here. If you call this verify function and you provide the key certificate stuff from the card here, and you provide this is the signature from the card and what it's supposed to have signed over, and the public key, because we don't want to store that in contract storage because it would be really expensive. Then this function will give you a yes or no answer as to, you'll either revert or not. And so what I'm in the progress of now is turning that into a check transaction function for a transaction guard for Gnosis Safe. So when you want to do a transaction on Gnosis Safe, if you have a guard set, it will run this function before the transaction goes out. And the transaction, if this function reverts, then obviously it reverts the whole thing and you can't do it. There's also the ability to check some state after execution, which we're not using here, and most things don't use, but it's interesting. The transaction data and the selector and the address that's going to and all that stuff is available from this data field and this to and value function. So the theory here would be you generate the safe transaction hash, and then you would check to see if someone has called a function on this contract to register that has run verify and proved that the card has delivered a signature against that. The execution of that could be done through something like the gas station network that would make it a gasless operation. Also, this is all going to be on Gnosis chain, because good luck running any of this on mainnet. It's going to cost like $2,000 a go. But the other than the curiosity value, it is potentially useful because all the EMV stuff can be swapped out for any other kind of hardware token. Imagine a U2F key, like a YubiKey, or any other WebAuthn compatible authenticator, like a Windows Hello on Windows 10, or any of those things. You plug them in and tap the button on the side to log into websites. Well, a contract like this could parse the same information and essentially require that you plug it in and tap a button in order to authorize a particular transaction. It is not as good as a hardware wallet, because you can't you can't see on the device what it is you're about to tap, but at least it prevents somebody from stealing enough credentials from your computer in order to run out and spend all your money. It's a Ethereum only, or EVM compatible L2 kind of solution, and it really only works on networks where gas is relatively cheap. But it is interesting, and so I like demonstrating things that are like off the wall like this last. So anyway, any questions?
Which part's on the wall?
That's a very good question. I think the writing is on the wall.
What's up, Willie? How are you today?
Best day ever. How you doing, Adam?
About the same.
I want to give time for Mr. Nerdhair's questions, but I also have a off the wall demo to share.
Really?
Do it.
And this is getting more and more interesting.
Surprise, surprise. Just when you thought we were done, we got another one. But first, does anyone have any questions about Mr. Nerdhair's awesome demo?
Is there a repo up for that we could take a look at?
There will be shortly. Sorry, I didn't do it already, but sick and stuff.
All good. Yeah, I'd take a look.
All right, I can only pause for so long before I feel the need to interject.
Send it.
Let's send
You're
it.
clear, man. Clear for takeoff.
Sweet. So I'm excited to show you guys something that I did not build, but the Giveth developers have built for us, and I put together the product spec for it. And this is I have the demo ready to share. I just got a demo early this morning at the Give Economy meeting. So if any of you guys haven't seen the Give Farm, it's on both Ethereum and XDAI right now, and it's really, in my opinion, it's the best farming experience out there. And not only is it the best farming UI UX, but there's this really cool concept of the stream that I'll get to in a moment. So I'm going to demo this really quick with Giveth Farm, but very soon there will be regen farms. Right now it says Give Friends. We've changed the name to regen farms. Fox and Honey is going to be one of the first projects included in this regen farms. And part of the reason for this is that we already had some Fox allocated towards liquidity mining on this Fox Honey pool. If you guys remember when we did the token swap with OneHive, after the amounts were all approved by both governances, prices moved, and we ended up with a lot of leftover Fox. It was about like 350,000 leftover Fox. And that Fox was earmarked for future liquidity mining. So we agreed, instead of just depositing it to the liquidity pool and having it be immediately arbed, we would just save that Fox to incentivize additional liquidity on this pool. And the regen farms and the regen streams that Giveth is launching soon are really like an awesome solution for this, especially because it's one of the few farming solutions available on Gnosis chain. And as you'll see, it's by far the best. So this is just the first pool that we're launching too, but we can absolutely launch additional pools following this. We can basically incentivize anything we want on Gnosis chain using these really awesome contracts and UI that Giveth has put together. So this could be like Fox staking. Maybe in the future we have an Angel Vault on XDAI and we want to incentivize that. So I'll talk about the stream and how that's a really, really nice evolution over just traditional pool to liquidity mining. It helps address the problem of mercenary liquidity mining, which we're all familiar with, I hope, at this point. But if not, the TLDR is that liquidity mining is one of our biggest expenses as a DAO and one of the biggest expenses for many DAOs, because the need for liquidity is essential, but renting it is a very costly endeavor because users expect these really high APRs to get excited. These are the real APRs, by the way. This was the test site. Oftentimes, what you'll see, every liquidity mining program will see these mercenary liquidity farmers who just come, they chase the highest APRs and they dump all of the tokens that they farm, which creates sell pressure on the token price. So real quick, I'll just show you guys this UI UX for farming. So these are the different pools that Giveth is incentivizing right now. Whenever you harvest, you can see both how much is available to harvest from that pool, how much will get added to your stream flow rate. So we'll have a Fox stream. And then how much you can claim. Whenever you claim from any of these, you also automatically claim whatever available rewards you have on your stream. So you can see this APR is really high, right? But if you'll notice, right now, only 13% of this is actually claimable immediately. So although it looks like super high compelling APR, really it's only about it's equivalent of like a 60% APR in terms of how much at max can be immediately sold. So we'll go ahead and harvest, and you'll see super smooth UI, fees incredibly low, thousandths of a penny. Really easy to add the token on Gnosis chain to your MetaMask if you haven't already. This will of course say Fox for ours. And then boom, transactions confirmed. It may take a second for the UI to update, but it'll update here soon. And we just claimed from our stream. So anytime you earn rewards in the Giveth farm or the regen farm, you claim X% immediately. For Giveth right now, this is 13%. It's going to start at 10% for Fox. And then the rest of it gets added to your stream. Now you have this stream that every block is you have more to claim from. And this stream will last for about 5 years. So for the Fox farm, it's going to run till the same date, December 23rd, 2026. And your stream rate only ever goes up. This can never go down. Anytime you're earning rewards and stuff and claiming rewards, you're adding to your stream rate. And this creates a really awesome dynamic where anyone who farms any of your token basically is now locked in for 5 years, basically. They're what we've seen is that, and anyone who's experienced the Give farm sees that it's very addictive, right? You get really excited to grow your rate, and once you have this rate, you're encouraged to come back regularly. So it helps keep anyone who engages with your farm basically retained to some degree for 5 years, which is a very valuable thing for any project. So that's the flow. We've got this Fox Honey pool. APR is looking great so far. Of course, this is just done with test tokens. Just connected Mr. Nerdhair to the lead dev over at Giveth to do a quick little contract review. And yeah, this is, I think this will be, I'll get back with a good ETA for launching, but I think March 11th now is looking like we may look to launch actually deploy this along with some other projects. So yeah, that's the quick high level demo. Soon we'll have a Fox Honey farm on XDAI, and when you farm it, you'll also be getting a Fox stream. And then in the future, we can add other pools. We can extend this farm. We can incentivize any token or LP token that we want to on either Gnosis chain or Ethereum, and keep anyone who engages in it retained for up to 5 years, and reward the best type of our community members, the long-term hodlers, as opposed to those mercenary farmers. Any questions? You guys can hear me, right?
Okay. Oh.
So
that would suck, wouldn't it?
Did you say anything yet?
So Willie, the 5-year lock, is that just kind of like a Sablier stream that you can withdraw anytime in those 5 years, or how does that work?
Yep, you can claim anytime in the 5 years. And that stream rate, the difference between just a Sablier stream is like you create a Sablier stream and it's like X tokens streamed over Y years. With this, you can add tokens to it. So anytime you'll claim your Fox rewards from the Fox Honey pool, you'll get X% immediately, and the rest of it gets added to this stream. And it's basically, between y'all and I, it's basically vesting. It's the same thing as vesting, but nobody really likes vesting, right? Vesting feels like something is being taken away from you or held back, and so it's got just inherently negative connotations. But this is the stream. It's a gift that keeps on giving, basically. And what we've seen is that people love the stream, and it's very addictive. So, and is there anyone on the call who can attest to that? So I'm not the only one.
I'm doing it.
Can confirm.
Great. Yeah, me and Toasty both use it for sure.
It's addictive for sure. We've somehow figured out how to make vesting cool and exciting, which is miraculous, honestly.
It's like nervous right now.
Part of it is that, like, whenever you hear vesting, it usually implies there's a stick behind it, and if you don't do a thing, like if you quit your job or whatever, then they're going to pwn you and take the rest of the stream. And the empowering way of putting it, it's not just a spin, it's an actual improvement, I think.
Great point, Mr. Nerd. I had not thought about that. Cool. Well, stay tuned for when this launches. Hope to see you guys all in the Fox Honey farm.
Awesome. Got to be fun to work in the union of your two DAO passions.
It's pretty phenomenal. Definitely ShapeShift is my number one, and where the majority of my time goes. But it's really beneficial. I mean, one of the reasons that I think ShapeShift DAO is set up for so much success was all of the learnings from Giveth. It's just such a great community, and huge shout out to Griff Green, who is just the godfather of DAOs and probably one of the most knowledgeable, experienced people, both in DAOs as well as tokenomics. And I learned so much of what I know about DAOs from him and from the awesome Giveth community. And it's pretty cool because we have valuable skills, right? And we like to give back, right? We're all in a good position to give back. One of the best ways we can give back is by taking our rare and valuable skills and using that to apply that to building disruptive economies that take one of the most, some outdated, archaic industries of nonprofits that has yet to be disrupted by even Web 2, and actually leverages all these amazing money Legos that we understand to build a better future. I would much rather volunteer or contribute to a project like that has huge potential than just going and picking up trash on the side of the road, because our efforts there can go much farther. So yeah, no pressure, but if anyone, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in Giveth, and there's definitely benefits, some synergistic benefits when you're involved with two DAOs. You know, you learn stuff from both that helps with the other.
Eases partnership negotiations too.
Willie, when did you say when that was going to go live?
We think March 11th. We were initially looking at having it go live today, and it's pretty much there. The backend's done. We're just doing some front end polish, and then we want to time it with some other projects, so we're not the only region farm there. And so it's looking. I think March 11th is like tentative next date, but I'm going to firm that up, and then we'll share an official ETA soon. All right, thanks.
That was awesome, Willie.
Thanks, Adam.
Great surprise. Thank you for jumping in here and sharing that.
My pleasure.
Cool. All right, so unless we have any other questions or anyone from the community, you're all very welcome to present and discuss. That's always on the table. If not, I guess that wraps us up for today, and we'll see you for the next demo on the 16th, I believe.